next webinar in the Intelligent Delivery Organization webinar series. Excited to do one more new session today and bring on two exciting guests. Great set of topics to go over today. And Varun, if we can have the deck come up as well. Awesome. So our session today is unlocking PS growth through automation and AI. Automation and AI, of course, are being used to reduce manual effort that's going into professional services delivery. And by reducing effort, by shrinking timelines, the idea is that the appetite for services goes up and more clients are willing to engage in going through projects with delivery teams. There's overall growth in PS engagements, though the individual size of projects potentially can shrink, and the effort that goes in, the cost of delivering can also shrink, increasing margins, and of course some of that benefit can be passed on to customers. Today for the session we have two guests joining us. Brian Hodges of Cloud Integrators, he's the president and co-founder, and Rob Fulton, who's the senior director of professional services at OpenGov. And both of these firms are, I would say, AI first in their way of thinking. They're at the forefront of trying out new capabilities that various AI providers are launching. They're developing their own internal tools in addition to, of course, both being Rocket Lane customers. So super excited to go through this with them today. I'll set the stage a little over here. Housekeeping very quickly. We are going to have Q&A as part of the session. Please feel free to post questions in the Q&A section. You can see the chat. Feel free to type in questions in chat as well. So we'll answer questions. We'll take questions that come up. And we will be sending out the webinar content post the webinar. So be aware that you will get the slides and the video from today sent over to you. So let's start with a quick, what's new in the world of AI just in the last week or so. I'm sure the first one is no surprise to anyone joining. How many of you maybe type in the chat your did you play around with the Studio Ghibli art option in Chat GPT, even on a personal level? If you did try it out, just type in the chat. And people, can you hear me well? I just saw a backstage comment that my audio may be in and out. Please type in the chat if you're able to hear us well, and if you did try out the new OpenAI image models. All right, everyone can hear me fine. So obviously the image models is one, and the world is going crazy with it. We had Sam Altman appealing to the world on X, saying, hey, go slow on this. Our team isn't able to sleep. So that's the level of adoption this is seeing, of course. We also had Gemini 2.5 launch, which is apparently the most well-performant AI model today from a coding perspective, among other things. And we also saw Microsoft launch reasoning agents. They launched a researcher and an analyst agents that Microsoft 365 Copilot users can leverage. So there is a lot changing every single week in the world of AI. And if we keep a tab on what's happening and have the opportunity to try out things, I think we're going to stay ahead of the game and bring innovation faster into our companies. Bigger changes in the last few months. I just want to give a few examples of what we're seeing. I've talked about this a few times on previous episodes of this series. Operator by ChatGPT, by OpenAI, right? Where it's able to do tasks. You prompt operator to do something for you. It's going to open up like a virtual browser or a browser on a virtual machine, go to a website, do a series of steps, complete transactions if needed. And this is happening just from prompts, right? You're not showing it what to do. You're just saying, go to this site, navigate, find XYZ information, provide the details, etc. And it's able to do all of that, which really, is interesting. You have Lovable, which I don't know how many of you tried it out, but amazing in terms of how easy it's become for people to develop web apps that they wish to will into existence. You think about it, your prompt, give us very simple prompt, it builds a whole application, the front end, the back end, everything. More people are going to turn into app developers with this. And of course, I think Cursor AI, the comment that stood with me was my tech co-founder saying, hey, it's almost like this can read my mind, and it's like developing code which I simply need to provide a very simple instruction, and there is so much code that comes. It's like it's reading my mind. And I think, what does this mean? It actually means we all need to plan to automate a lot more than we have been thinking of so far. I think my perspective on what's the art of possible, what can be automated in the last 3 months, I would say it's dramatically changed given what we've seen with tools like Operator and Cursor, etc. I want to give 3 examples from our own professional services team in terms of the work we do and how we've seen AI help us, right? The first one I'm going to talk about is, we usually get input from our customers in some sort of a spreadsheet as part of our implementation process. They're like, hey, here's our process. Can you take this and turn it into a template for us in Rocket Lane? Now, they can do it on their own as well. The platform is self-serve, do it yourself. But obviously, you have a long project plan, you have a spreadsheet. Instead of manually copying over things, they turn it over to us and say, can you do this for us? And we used to copy over things manually. There are, of course, efficiencies we can gain. There's like bulk copy and so on that we can use. We can write a script to do it from the back end, etc. But then there's always a transformation that first needs to happen, right? Customer gives us data in a certain format or a plan in a certain format. We need to turn it into our desired format. And our team started using just prompts to say, hey, transform this from the source format. I want it in this particular format as a CSV, turn it into a JSON, and then use that JSON to, hit our backend APIs to import a template, set up a template. So that's turned what is typically, 30 minutes, 40 minutes of work into one simple prompt, 5 minutes of work to set up a new template. A lot of time saving there for us because every customer is going to give us a bunch of templates that they want to set up. The second example I want to give is a recent feature we launched in Rocket Lane. This is productized already. We call it AI Fills. And the idea behind this feature is there's a lot of busy work that happens after meetings, which involve either setting up some kind of documents in which we're going to fill out content. For example, you went on a requirements gathering session with a customer. You then need to document the requirements that came out from that session. You went on a escalation call with a customer. You need to send a certain kind of follow-up email after that, in which you're capturing here the issues that came up. Here's why it's important to you. Here's the solutions we offered on the call. Here's the next steps and action items on both of us, right? After a kickoff meeting, there's a different kind of email you want to send, different kinds of things you may want to document. After a solutioning call, you may want to document what are the trade-offs that were discussed, what were the decisions made. So the feature we launched, AI Fills, is able to pull the right content from different kinds of calls in and format it the right way, pull it into documents and email templates based on the prompts, custom prompts that you've codified into these templates. So you can have a prompt that says, here's what I want to pull into this document. in this section of the document. This other section of the same document, I have a different prompt for what to format, what to bring in, etc. Likewise in emails as well. And that's saving a ton of time for all of the customers that have already started using this capability. This is something I set up for myself, escalation follow-up template, and it's saving me a ton of time too. A third example I want to give is one of our customer success managers. We were moving an additional team of a customer over from Asana, another project management tool, into Rocket Lane. And so they had a bunch of 600 projects that needed to be migrated. Usually we would have taken this to our tech team and said, hey, let's extract the content, let's build some custom scripts and run it to do the migration. Instead, our CSM, who usually doesn't code, is technical enough, is dangerous enough, I would say, but usually doesn't write full-fledged scripts. He was able to just prompt ChatGPT into giving him the right script, and then use that script, loop through all of the files that were exports from Sana, and then pull them in automatically into Rocket Lane using that script. So almost felt liberating for him to be able to do this on his own without depending on others. So just wanted to say, we've started to fully embrace thinking AI first. Whatever we want to do as a team, we're now saying, hey, can we do this with AI? Let's give that a shot and then get started. Now, I think the biggest takeaway from this is AI is helping us move from helping with work around work to actually doing the work, right? So what I mean by work around work is, hey, can AI help me send an update to a customer based on the status of a project? Can AI detect what is the health of a project? Can it help me automate a follow-up around something, etc.? That is work around work. But now the actual deliverables that we work on for customers are also getting automated in many ways. And that's what we're going to bring in Brian and Rob to talk about today. So happy to welcome both of you on stage, Rob and Brian. Thank you for putting together all of the content we're going to go over today. Excited to have you share on your journeys. The format we're going to use here, folks, is have the structure, where we first want to talk about how are you as a team thinking about what you want to automate next, where you want to start using AI, where are you going to see the big impact, what's that mechanism or way of working to decide what to do next, how is the team identifying where to go. The next is, how are you structuring yourself to drive this change? Because typically in PS teams, delivery teams, we're all under pressure to deliver something for a customer. We're behind on things, and so finding time to invest back into bettering our processes, automating more, is hard too. So how are you doing that? And then, of course, I think some examples of where you have done this and what results you're seeing is what we're going to present to the audience today. With that, I'm going to turn it over firstly to Rob to talk about the culture and mindset you're all building at OpenGov.
Yeah, thanks, Sri. Yeah, I think at OpenGov historically we've always been fostering this culture of AI curiosity and how we can do more with the same as opposed to more with less. I think from this point on, from a couple years ago, it has been, we are an AI first company, and we're going to be looking at AI driven solutions that we can take to the market, not only to help enhance the lives of our customers, but also looking inward and seeing how we can make AI a force multiplier to take teams that have been doing 32 hours or 40 hours of customer work a week. How can we make that more meaningful and drive greater impact to our customer base?
Great.
Perfect.
Well, I think I'm up. And despite all of the AI tools we have, my background wasn't right, and I had to fix that. And then there's clearly some audio challenges here. But that all said, those problems aside, I think as services leaders, if you look at this list, you've probably experienced one or all of these at some time or another. And this is, as I look at the opportunity with AI and automation, we finally have tools at our disposal that can finally help us with inefficient project delivery, finding ways to tweak your playbooks or to tweak your methodologies to streamline what you're doing. Utilization is always a big challenge, and a lot of times when I talk about utilization, not only with my team but with customers we work with, is not just underutilized. What about those folks that are overutilized? When you have resources that are uh, putting in far too many hours, burning out to the point where they decide they're going to leave the organization because no one heard them silently suffering. So having the ability to automate and identify under and overutilized resources, KPIs, dashboards that give you visibility into how your practice is actually functioning, but also providing some predictive analytics on where things are headed based on the historical data that's in the system. Um, Manual reporting, we still have this issue at InCloud to some degree, but oftentimes when I talk to clients, I hear horror stories about 3 hours, 4 hours to create this report. So finding ways to automate and leverage AI for that. The sales to service handoff gap. This is one of those things that we all talk about it. It shouldn't be a problem, and yet here we are still struggling with this. So there's some really cool things you can do here. And then the last two items there, missed or late deliverables, both for my internal team as well as the client activity, as well as costly escalations. It's 10 times more costly to have an escalation that's blown up to an extreme where you've got to get several layers of leadership involved versus getting that resolved earlier in that escalation process. So these are all challenges I'm sure each of you have seen one time or another, and there's a lot of ways to help solve these with the tools we have.
It's a great list, Brian, and I think for the audience, one of the things to note is Brian has also the additional lens of working with other post-sale teams, other professional services teams. So it's not just from their own experience at nCloud, but also coming from what he's hearing from some of their other customers who are running delivery teams, right? So I think that helps to get that overall context to say, hey, here's like a wider set of opportunities we see. And I want to add one more comment, which is that though I know the larger hype and focus is around AI, all of us, and this was interesting to hear from some of the CIOs we've been engaging with as well, that it's both about AI and automation that we can do, not just AI driven automation, but even other kind of automation, which is possible, was already possible, but we weren't paying attention to. But I think it's become very important for all of us to think about moving to radical efficiency. What more can we automate? Of course, where we're able to leverage AI to do even better, we do that. But even otherwise, don't miss the simple automations too. That, move to the next slide. So we talked about what are some of the opportunities. I think let's go into understanding what frameworks we can use to figure out what to prioritize and how to structure ourselves to actually go after problems and solve them. I'm going to turn it over to Rob again for the next couple of slides to walk us through how they think about it at OpenGov.
Yeah, and kind of going back to what I was saying earlier with this AI first mindset, it's kind of a double-edged sword in that we're opening up this curiosity to the masses at the company and saying, be curious, look for AI driven use cases that can further drive efficiency. But I think the important thing, and one thing that we've done pretty well on the services side, is putting some guardrails in harnessing those ideas and then leveraging them against what's going to have the greatest impact to our business, to our customer base. So we're fortunate enough to have an integration solutions team that is kind of that gatekeeper, for lack of a better word, of aggregating all of those ideas and then garnering those under the impression of like, what is going to give us the highest return? What are tasks that are causing us the most pain? Like, what is the benefit of us investing the time and effort in operationalizing these bots? And then how does this fit with the long-term vision of what we're trying to do from a delivery perspective? So if we go to the next slide, I can't give enough kudos to our integration solutions team. They're really the brains behind the operation, but they're aggregating feedback from all of our services teams. So just giving folks a little bit of insight into what we do at OpenGov. We bring the modern cloud to government, but that's by way of multiple software solutions. So we have 7 suites that we take to market. And each of those suites has unique use cases. So what the integration solutions team is looking for is, what are the use cases that have the biggest bang for the buck, as far as like, how can we span those across 7 different delivery teams to give that customer that unified experience. So they're accessing and assessing the business cases. They're coordinating the rollout. They're managing the internal projects to take these out. But the really important thing is, we don't want these AI initiatives to be pilots that get us to the 10 or 15 yard line. We actually want to see these all the way through. So it's not just rolling out one use case that barely pierces the surface. It's digging a little bit deeper and making this a robust use case that we can apply to all of our professional services teams, so we can see the greater ROI that we see when we're building the business cases.
Rob, a quick question on this.
Yeah.
When it comes to the integration solutions team, is there dedicated bandwidth this team has kept aside for internal focused AI initiatives to drive efficiency? Is that how do you make the business case for the team, the bandwidth from the team, etc.? What does it look like? How many initiatives are picked each quarter or each year? Tell us more.
Yeah, so we operate under an OKR framework. So it has been one of our key results for the past 2 quarters of identifying a use case, building that use case out, but then it becomes something that we build on top of. So one of the examples that we'll get to later is the SOW generation. It's piloting it in one suite, testing out the feasibility and making sure that it's good to go. But then it's also, okay, future quarters, we have to bring this into other suites that we've been touching, so that it's a unified use case across our entire scoping team, that we have an AI-driven SOW generation. So they are given the autonomy through the OKR process. We definitely prioritize that. But in features that they've been able to build and take to our customer base, we've been able to assign revenue to that too, because in cases we're saving hours that we can either repurpose to further drive adoption, or that helps us on the margin side.
Perfect. Thank you. Gonna turn it over to Brian to give a picture of how you've seen things done, not just in nCloud but across different size companies.
Yeah, thanks. So this is just and again, as consultants, we know that a very common response when we're asked questions by our clients is, it depends. And this is definitely one of those cases. So these are just sort of ballpark numbers around different things that we've seen. But when it comes to evaluating how to leverage AI, or where and how to implement automations, I've seen multiple sizes of practices here. And if you're on the small side, like we are here at nCloud, it's things like this are usually led by your PS leader or senior project manager. And it's just 1 or 2 people that own just managing the strategy and the execution. There's a sort of an informal evaluation and assessment of what steps might be applicable, and then a real focus on narrowing down at the task and maybe even status level automations at the beginning, and then you kind of grow from there. You move on to the mid-size organizations where they've got a PS ops team or a delivery ops team. There are, generally then structured workflows that are used for evaluating and assessing what might be leveraged or what you might be able to leverage these tools for. The strategy typically driven by committee or it's assisted by the CS team, the delivery teams, maybe even some product input, just depending on what your product looks like. And then you typically would see a pilot or pilot programs that are used for, cross-functional automation and things like that. And when you get into large practice, if you're in that, enviable position, although there are pros and cons on all sizes here, but you typically then would see a COE that would lead something like this. There's a phase ownership that's kind of split up across the different teams, whether it's ops. I am seeing more and more larger organizations having an AI function within their services team that kind of drives some of these initiatives. And then the strategies at this level are typically driven through frameworks, and then execution is generally part of an enterprise transformation. Again, when you get into large practices, it means they're probably part of a large company, which has a lot of rigor that needs to go into a transformation of this size. So yeah, just some things to think about. Again, I'm sure you all have your own size and definitions to deal with, but these are some things to think about.
In a way, Rob, does the large practices resonate with how you're all going about things at OpenGov?
It does, and Brian, as you were showing this, I kind of viewed it as like we're a bit of a tweener. We're doing some things in the mid-sized practice, but starting to move more towards the large practice side. So this resonates with me, yeah.
Got it. And I think one of my takeaways as you went through this was also, both from what Rob said and what Brian has captured is, the product involvement, where typically as part of, a lot of us who joined this session today and who we have, Rob as well, are part of what is called an embedded PS team, right? A PS team within a product company. And what we're seeing as a trend is there is what is popularly seen as Palantir's model of, they call it forward deployed engineers, where you're building the product alongside customers. That's becoming more and more common in the AI first world, where there are gaps from a product perspective, there are efficiencies from a product implementation perspective that can benefit from building more capabilities, but it doesn't always have to be built in the core product offering. It's often built by the PS team and then productized, pulled back into product. And I feel, one of the comments Rob made attested to that. And over here as well, when Brian said product input, it's not just, I think it doesn't stop at input. As long as PS is working on AI initiatives that are aligned with product, it gives that opportunity to say, okay, let's, pull some of those capabilities back into productize, so that every customer can benefit from it. It becomes part of a offering, etc. So I think that's another trend we're seeing. As most companies turn into AI first companies, some of the PS work gets, folded back into product. All right. Now we're going to jump into specific use cases and results that these teams have seen. So Rob is going to talk about what they've been trying out at OpenGov, and then Brian will talk about what experiments he's been seeing their team champion at nCloud. Over to you, Rob.
Yeah. So I'll touch on kind of two of the core pilot cases that we've been looking at over the last few quarters. from an AI perspective. So one of our key deliverables, and I'm sure it's very similar or has slightly different terminology across all the different service leaders on the call, is we produce a solution blueprint at the end of our implementations. And we do this for a couple different reasons. One, we want to capture all the key criteria that the customers agreed to in the implementation. Two, we also want to use it as an internal document to help drive efficiencies in the customer engagement post implementation. So we have a support team. We want to make sure that they're armed with, hey, we configured it this way, and there were reasons as to why we configured it, and also just general system configuration settings. So one of the use cases that we've dove into on our permitting side is extracting all of that information from the product and aggregating that master document to provide to the customer. So through AI driven functionality, we've been able to gather and aggregate all that information. And that's something that would have been manual by the consultants. So talking to just pure time savings, that's 2 to 3 hours worth of manual work, and frankly, quite laborious. So it's not only making it more efficient from a delivery perspective, it's touching on what Brian was talking about earlier with, you have those people that are doing those laborious tasks that may not be pointing to that as signals for their burnout, but it's definitely attributing to that. So being able to have them spend their time on more impactful work, that's more of a motivator to the employee too. So definitely been seeing some value add there. And then the second use case, if we go to the next slide, that's touching on the statement of work piece that I was alluding to earlier. So again, very manual process. We have aggregation of information coming from our sales team to our scoping team to dictate, these are the pieces of the software suite that they're looking to purchase. These are the use cases and the required capabilities that we're going to implement to this customer. From there, it becomes a manual ask of, okay, they have this functionality. How do those tasks and deliverables make their way into the statement of work? To date, it's been manual. So it's a collection of deliverables that our solution consultants are going into, taking that information. Okay, they've decided that they want to implement capital budgeting. That comes with this list of deliverables. I need to manually make sure that our statement of work reflects those deliverables. Super time consuming, extends the deal or the deal time, and also just not an enjoyable experience for our solution consultants. So diving into this from an AI perspective, this is an internal AI use case that we can make our solution consultants' lives easier, make the customer experience better, and shorten deal time. So win-win-win from an ROI perspective. And it helps with the sales handoffs, which Brian was touching on earlier as well. It helps us further aggregate information that we need to arm our delivery team with before they're going into the implementation to further curb these product escalations or project escalations sooner. So being more proactive than reactive for sure.
Just want to add another layer of how the two things that Rob talked about are, there's more, I think, value that they're going to unlock over a period of time from these kind of automations. Of course, SOW, a lot of manual work goes in. Every company we're talking to, every customer of ours is on a journey to automate this piece now. We're actually collaborating with some of them to say, hey, let's build this together for you now. But when you think about something like the solution blueprinting, which Rob talked about, it's not something that every company is doing or even focusing on. But it's super important because I think the amount of documentation you do is going to yield compounding results as AI becomes more and more powerful. The more you document, the more AI has to learn from. Think about, here is a SOW. Today, if you're having that mapping of these SOWs translated into these configurations, right? If you have that end blueprint, and let's assume you also have documents in between. There's a requirements document, there is a solution document, then there is like the final configuration blueprint. Now that's going to help AI understand how one led to the other. This SOW led to these solutions being discussed, these trade-offs being discussed, led to this final configuration, is a great training ground for AI to learn more and more, and then even to come back and suggest to a future solution consultant or a PS consultant, hey, for this SOW, here are some proposed solutions. Do you want to finalize this? For this solution, here is a proposed configuration. Do you want me to go and set it up? So the AI agent probably can learn and go set up things in the future based on what it's learned from all of these documents. Today, a lot of us don't have the bandwidth to document, so we don't. But the more we document, the more value we're going to get out of it. Not just for predicting what or suggesting what a customer needs, but downstream, as Rob said, the support team. Today, this may be context the support team manually refers to, but if they're using bots for their customer support, this document can be tagged to be a resource for that specific customer. So if someone from customer A reaches out to the support bot can reference what was the solution, why was it configured a certain way, and respond accordingly to the customer. We are actually seeing one of our customers do this already, where they generate a lot of automated documents around configurations for their customers and use that to train, per customer, train the bot to say, okay, here's what we know about this customer. So when you're answering questions for this customer, use these resources for a more specific answer for them. Just want to capture that because I felt there is so much value in documenting more. Gonna move to Brian to talk about some of the things you all are working on at nCloud from a, implementing AI for various use cases.
Sure. So what and again, it's not like as services leaders, we don't have enough acronyms to deal with in our lives, but I'm going to throw one more at you. And that's what we use. It's called EASE. The goal with this, or what we're trying to do with it, is a lot of organizations are trying to figure out, okay, how do we get started with this? What's a model we can use to kind of figure out where to get started, and then how to loop through it and use a methodology that can get us value out of it. So E stands for evaluate, assess, strategize, and execute. And it's fairly self-explanatory. The goal on the evaluate side is you just look at all the things that you're doing from a services practice perspective, your delivery, your resource management, holding customers accountable, all of the things that you're doing, all those processes that are time consuming. You create an inventory of those, and then you assess them, you prioritize and segment. You score them, you identify which ones are going to be easy to do, which ones are going to be hard to do, where it's going to be high value, low value. And with that, you can define the opportunities where you can either leverage AI or automation. And again, the key here is creating a scorecard that gives you some North Star to follow when it comes to which ones you're going to focus on first. And once you've gotten through that, you've got the idea, then you've got the opportunity to build and plan. And that's in the strategize phase. And this is where you just build a roadmap on what you're going to do. And again, if you think about the slide that I shared earlier, as far as the size goes, as far as your organization, these can be as simple or as complex in each of these stages as you like, but it's a fairly straightforward process. And once you start to get into the build and plan, you identify those success metrics. And I'm going to call this out again, success metrics. I talk to clients a lot and I ask, what is the actual value you're expecting to get? How much time saving are you expecting? And I push really hard to try to get really clear objectives, really finite numbers to track to as you're going forward. And then in the execute phase, this is where you run a pilot, you deliver on whatever motion you've developed, you document the lessons that you've learned, you share those success stories, and you maintain kind of a log that tracks what worked, what didn't. Did we hit our goals? Did we not hit our goals? So this model is something that that we've seen in use, and we think can be a great way to get started if you haven't already in your journey for automation and AI. And I know we're getting, let me just check the time here. I'll just try to zip through these here pretty quick. So if you go to the next slide, I'll just give you a little bit of a view of what this looks like in form here. So this is this is using easy as the four areas. And again, when you're looking at identifying the challenges, this is specific to that sales handoff, manual handoff, missed information, customer goals were missed, stakeholders were unknown, critical constraints were buried in notes that no one in the services side was aware of. And it took the PS organization a ton of time to just validate details that are already in Salesforce. I don't know about you all, but as a services leader, when I get on a call with one of my consultants and they're talking to a client, they say, "So what are your goals or your objectives?" It's like scratching a chalkboard. Why do we not know that already after all of the sales cycle that occurred? So this is a sweet spot. This is something I think a lot of folks can relate to. And with Rocket Lane in particular, you can, with the integration with Salesforce, you can capture a lot of that information. Now, again, a lot of times it comes down to whether your sales organization is doing what they're supposed to do, and there's governance on that side with Salesforce. But assuming that you've got good governance on that side, you can absolutely use Rocket Lane to bring that stuff in and educate your consultants without having to force them to go look for things, which, as Rob was saying earlier, can reduce that burnout factor when a consultant thinks about all of the administrative minutia that they have to do just to get their job done. This is one of those things that I think is a really kind of a low-hanging fruit. With this particular process, phase one was just do the implementation of getting the data coming over from Salesforce, make sure that the sales data is standardized and captured and ready to be consumed by your services team, and then embed that handoff insight, and not just some of those details, but you think about all of the ways that Zoom or Gong or all these calls are being captured these days, and all the sentiment that can be captured there and leveraged using AI to give you a sense of who am I working with? What are these personalities like? How did they work with our sales team? What are some challenges that we ran into? Who's the person I need to be aware of as a services resource? Who's gonna give me flack? Who's gonna push my buttons? Right? What are some things that I can learn from some of that content that was captured? And again, when you look at this, you want to take these in bite-sized chunks. You maybe pilot this with a couple of customers or a couple engagements over a period of time. Measure the results and see how it goes. And if we go to the next slide, just give you an example of when I talk about pushing for results here. And these are, again, I'm going to just caution that these are aspirational. These are the targets that we're looking to achieve. But this is all, all of this is stuff that's going on now. So over the next 12 months, the goal is reducing that onboarding prep time by 30%. Helping the NPS scores for post kickoff to increase from where it was originally at 7.1 to an 8.6. Get some alignment on the onboarding scope so that there are increased alignment on this. Get that increased by 40%. But I think the biggest one is to avoid an estimated 500K per year is a pretty good size organization in rework and delivery delays. If you think about, consultants sitting idle, rework that you had to do because you missed some expectations or some scope from the sales process. Again, I will emphasize, as you take on your initiatives, don't stop with just saying we want to align on the onboarding scope and improve the process. Find a number. Do so. If you've got the data, and I want to come back to something Sri said a moment ago. AI is only as good as the data and the learning that it can do from that data. So more and more, if you've not done this yet, you've got to think about ways to feed the beast. Get information into whatever you're doing around AI, capture information, because if you have that level of detail, or whatever level of detail you have, can help you drive these kind of numbers and can help you ascertain whether or not you have a baseline to go against, and then what your goal was, and how did you achieve against that. So this is just one example. I actually have a couple of other examples, but I know, Sri, we're getting short on time, so I'm not sure we have time to get through the next two here.
I would say let's go through one more and then we'll take some questions. I see there are at least 4 questions that have come in, so we'll finish this one and then go to questions and then see if we have time for one more.
All right. Well, so this is a perfect example. And again, how many of as services leaders, how many times have you seen in your project portfolio that the consultants or the PMs reported everything's good, things are going well, there's no indication from your client emails that anything's going wrong there, and then you get an escalation call and the executive from the other side says, this thing's been a disaster since day one. And yet you have all kinds of anecdotal or even hardcore emails and things that indicate there has been value, the client has received and has been giving you positive feedback. If you go to the next slide, again, putting this into the ease framework here, looking at both sides of this, sometimes the status reports were overly optimistic. There wasn't a formal mechanism to track sentiment, client sentiment in real time. And so escalations kind of come late after the stakeholders have disengaged or have become, dissatisfied. So the opportunity here is to find a way, lightweight. Again, the key here is lightweight, to create a recurring event survey to get the pulse of your client. Again, we don't want to overload on this because we all probably get more surveys than we care to even respond to. But with Rocket Lane, there's some very light touch, simple ways, one click, client's done, to give you a sense of how things are going with the project. And then you can automate some alerts based on either the response to some of that feedback or just a lack of feedback that you're seeing in some of the sentiment or some of the conversations that you're having. Again, suggest that you take this in phases. You launch perhaps phase 1, you launch an automated milestone-based survey, 3 questions, very simple, let the client answer it, and then build your internal dashboard based on some of that survey feedback and some of the other sentiment that you might have collected, and create those automated alerts. Let's just go to the next slide and talk about what some of the results could be with this. Again, escalation volume, if you can decrease that by 30%, the amount of time savings, not just for project delivery resources, but for the leadership team, and just the amount of time and energy that you all are putting into dealing with these escalations, improving your NPS scores overall. This is not just a services necessarily related number, but something that is important to your company as a whole. And if you have a better experience during the onboarding or implementation phase, it's going to impact the overall client sentiment and the overall NPS score for you. Project save rate, again, how often can you prevent an escalation before it becomes a 4-alarm fire? And proactively intervening before those challenges get visible to your stakeholders, to the executives on the client side. So I think that's just a couple of examples there. I've got a third, but let's leave that for the folks to read if they get the deck here after the call.
Awesome. I'm gonna take a few questions. First one, which comes from Subbu Shankara. There's 2 parts to the question. I'm gonna combine 2 questions. First one is, are you allowed to use open source LLM models in your implementation work? Do you build your own models from scratch? Same question applicable to data usage as well, whether you work with, data within your enterprise. Maybe Rob, if you can share how, concerns around, what versions of LLMs to use, what's approved by IT, how does that work in a company your size?
Yeah, so it's all driven from ChatGPT. So we're building GPTs within our own environments. So each of the use cases that I touched on are all originated from GPT bots that were built within OpenGov's ChatGPT environment.
And it's similar for us too at Rocket Lane. Even at our scale, we are SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, so we need to take care of what goes into the LLMs out there. And the way our team, and I'm guessing it might be the same at OpenGov, is we have Azure's version of OpenAI ChatGPT, available to our team to log in and use, and that ensures that it's an enterprise version. What you feed to it isn't going out beyond the enterprise. So there are those safeguards available. The next question I see is from Rani Bagdia. What tool are you using to create these solution blueprints as well as automation of SOW? Would love to understand more. Rob, are these custom developed tools? Is it underlying using OpenAI again?
Yeah, so same answer. Our integration solutions team is building GPTs that are able to run those jobs within our OpenAI environment. Same thing with actually, you guys kind of were developing in tandem. Our consultants have a GPT for meeting notes, recap emails, all of that administrative work that they were doing. That wasn't a use case that I was able to touch on, but same principles within our OpenAI environment.
Got it. Brian, have you seen other clients or your team leverage specific tools which are more enterprise approved? What are you seeing on that front?
Yeah, it's again, most organizations require internal GPTs or versions, as you were saying, as both of you are alluding to, being able to protect that information and making sure that it's held within the confines of your working stack. But I will comment on the Rocket Lane functionality with some of the new with some of the ability to take the recordings that we have from our calls and provide summaries for our consultants to put directly into either a status follow-up or there are a variety of ways that you can take that data and plug it into different things within Rocket Lane. So most certainly with Rocket Lane, there are ways for you to save 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there for work for your consultants with some of the functionality that Sri and his team are putting into Rocket Lane.
Thanks, Brian. Next question is again from Rani. Is the handoff ready form built in? I think you talked about handoff automation, Brian. I think the question comes around that. Would you build that in Salesforce, or would that form be built on Rocket Lane? Be helpful to understand where it sits as they are also exploring this automation. And Rani, my quick answer is, if we learn more about how you're trying to do this, where the sales team lives today, we can come up with suggestions, because we've seen customers do both kinds. And it can even be some information flows automatically from Salesforce, but additional information needs to be validated in a pre-kickoff stage by either the solution consultants involved in the deal or the AEs filling out additional information on a Rocket Lane form as well. So we've seen both options. Happy to share how we've seen those work out. But Brian, any thoughts, comments from you?
Yeah, it's again, there's a variety of ways you can do it. The key is, first and foremost, you've got to make sure you've got consistency from the pre-sales process, that the sales organization is populating whatever that content is. So again, there are ways that you can bring data in. There's a connection between Rocket Lane and Salesforce, and you can select in a variety of ways. You can select the information that you want to bring into Rocket Lane and have it available to your consultants, and auto generate some project documentation that help educate your services folks on some of the nuances for the project. Again, key here is this is where we have to work with our sales organization counterparts. If you're an embedded PS organization, you're working with a software sales team, perhaps coming up with an agreed upon core set of critical metrics. That's just a place to start, right? Once you've got that core set of critical metrics that you both agree upon are non-negotiable, scope, timelines, very specific details about the engagement that are pertinent to your organization, that's going to be critical for your services teams as they begin their engagement. Come up with that baseline set of items, and then you can expand from there, right? Then you can start talking about, hey, let's start bringing in some of the Zoom content. Let's start having AI gather some of the details around the calls that were taking place so that we can put personas in place and we can start understanding the type of people and the resources that we might be working with within the services team. So, again, you can see there's an evolution of this process in the sales to service handoff, but it doesn't, you don't have to boil the ocean from day one. Just start with a very small set of core metrics you want to bring from the sales process into Rocket Lane, get that working, and then build from there.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Brian. I also see, looking at the people who have joined the webinar today, I see some familiar names, people we've met over a period of time at TSIA and, various other forums. I want to say we want to make this a dialogue. I'm sure there's interesting work you all are doing today using AI. We want to shine the spotlight on great work that various teams are doing. Reach out to us with the interesting work you're doing. There's also our upcoming conference, Propel. Definitely want to touch upon what we're doing over there. And there's an additional use case Brian had. We didn't have time to go over that, but feel free to reach out to Brian to learn more about what they're doing from a client accountability perspective. I'm going to jump to one slide I had on Propel coming up May 14th and 15th. The idea is to celebrate great work in pushing forward the whole PS function in various companies. How are teams driving towards radical efficiency? What are they doing with automation, AI? How are they helping their teams prepare for change? And so if you have great stories, talk to us about it. We also have awards this year for most innovative PS teams, most effective, change you've brought into your PS orgs. There's a whole, list of 5 awards you can qualify for. So check that out. If your team is doing good work, you want to reward them. I think, we are one of the very few conferences for PS leaders. Come out there, represent your teams, learn from each other, as well as make sure if you're doing good work, there's a chance to show a reward back to the team that, hey, we won this best PS team or best PS leader award. It's thanks to the team that the leader wins as well. So represent and do that is one appeal from me. And rocketlane.com/propel is how you can land on our conference, look at the agenda, sign up for it, reach out to me if you want a coupon or something. Happy to help with a discounted coupon as well. With that, I'm going to say we have a minute left. So I'm going to turn it over to both Rob and Brian to talk about what you've seen as challenges to be aware of when you go down this journey of like trying out new experiments with AI. I think one thing Rob mentioned was taking things to completion, not letting it be at the 10-yard, 15-yard line. But what else, folks?
Yeah, I mean, I would just double that down. Like the last thing I want to have our teams do is focus time and effort on partial solutions. So seeing it through to that sense of finality, like that to me is the driving motivator. Brian, what about you?
Yeah, just, AI is not perfect. It's still got a long way to go. So whatever you do, you got to continue to test, You're gonna bump your head a couple of times. You're gonna find some things you're just like, wow, I can't believe AI is not smart enough to figure that out. So obviously there's a methodology that we recommend that can help you take a methodical approach to this, and I would encourage that. And the last thing I would say is, the more data, the more documentation, the more you can feed the beast, the better you will have, the better results you get. So those are, just a couple of closing remarks, but looking forward to continuing this dialogue.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian and Robert. And great point there on testing, evaluation. And one comment I saw on Twitter once from a VC who follows and invests a lot in AI is evaluation is becoming the moat in building AI solutions, meaning whenever you make changes, use a new model, you need ways to test and validate that your solution is still performing well, performing to the spec. So the more you have ways to automate that to really understand how well your solution is performing, the better off you are. So I think keep that in mind as you build custom solutions or use things that are more out of the box, which help you. All right. I think that's all time we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for joining in, and do reach out to us with more stories you may have on what you're doing in your companies.